everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Adoption Squad. I'm your host, Mary. Annie will join us on future episodes. Today we'll be speaking with Simon Benn, who is an adoptee and a coach empowering adoptees to thrive, as well as working with parents to help their children be happy and confident. Here's our conversation. A little bit about your background. First of all, you are an adoptee.
Yeah. So I'm Simon. I'm Simon Benn. I live up in the north of England. I live near Old York. So you've got New York in the States. I know you're a couple of states across. I live 10 miles from Old York, which is 200 miles north of Edinburgh. 200 miles south of Edinburgh, 200 miles north of London, and 60 miles east of Manchester. And that's the last bit of geography that I'm going to go into. I am not a geography educator, but I guess sometimes it just helps. It helps to hear these this English voice and where we're from. So I live fairly close to where I was brought up by my mum and dad, and they actually collected me from an adoption agency in Liverpool. And everybody's heard of Liverpool because of the Beatles and the football. That's about 80 miles away from where we live now. So my mum and dad collected me when I was 5 weeks old, and they told me so early that I was adopted that I can't even remember not knowing. So it was a good adoption. My parents also adopted a little sister for a couple of years after I came along. She was from a different biological parents, and so when I do remember as we were growing up, my sisters used to say things like, "Well, have you ever thought about finding your real mum and dad?" And I said, "Well, no, mum and dad are our real mum and dad." So I didn't have any trauma or upset that was adoption related as a kid. On my 40th birthday, my mum and dad came round and to take me and my wife out for dinner, and they brought a box of possessions that I'd left behind in the family home when I'd moved out when I was about 22, so 18 years earlier. And included in that box of possessions was my teddy bear, which I'd had as a kid. And my dad told my wife that this teddy bear was actually a gift from my birth mother. And my wife told me, and I thought, well, that's a bit strange that they hadn't told me before, but that's all I thought. It's a little bit strange. There's nothing more to it than that. But I was telling somebody that a couple of weeks or a couple of months later, and I had a massive eruption of anger about my birth mother not loving me enough to keep me, and this teddy bear being a consolation prize, and a lot of profanity and a lot of swearing. And the lady that was talking to Sarah, she said, "Well, I'm a mum, Simon, and I don't think it was kind of quite like that." And so the volcano stopped erupting. But around that time, I'd had some business stuff, but some business success that I'd worked on for a long time. I'd felt success had eluded me, and I hit some goals that didn't make me happy. And somehow, I got it into my head that the reason that I wasn't happy was because of the adoption stuff. So. And now I can see that wasn't really the truth, but that's how it seemed to me at the time. So 13 years ago. So is that all making sense?
It is.
Yeah.
Now, did you take that information about your birth mother and then conduct an adoption search at that point?
No, that wasn't till a bit later on. Well, another 8 years later. So I got into some personal development stuff, looking around, like a higher state of consciousness or happiness and those sorts of things, self-esteem. So I got into that, and that helped me enormously. And I decided to help others. So I got out of my business, and then, about 8 years later, probably, I had another big, there was another big sort of drama in my life, really. And it was a little drama, but I ended up reading a book by a lady called Nancy Verrier called The Primal Wound, which is all about how adoptees don't like change and want to control things and don't like being rejected. And I thought this book explains everything. So I was still, right, I've got to tackle this head on. I've got to get through this. And I got some therapy. And actually during one of the therapy sessions, the idea of my birth mother being outside the therapy room and rejecting me again, as I saw it at that point, that came into my mind, and I just thought, oh, well, I'm not having this. I'm not going through life afraid like this. And then I conducted the search. Yeah.
And what did you discover? Was she still living, and were you able to meet with her?
No, I discovered that she died. Unfortunately, she died way before I even started looking. And I got my adoption file. So all the correspondence, all the letters from my birth mother before I was born to the adoption agency about having me adopted when I was born, from them back to her, and from my mum and dad to the adoption agency, the adoption council, whatever it was called in those days, and from them back to her. So, but what I also found, and this was I'm getting chills down my back as I share this with you. I also found a letter in amongst those letters, there was a letter, and it was dated the Monday after I'd been handed over, shall we say. So piecing together what had happened, I'd been fostered. My birth mother had gone to the foster home, collected me, taken me to the council, and handed me over to, and met, actually, I found out that they'd met briefly my mum and dad. And that had happened on a Friday. And on the Monday, my birth mother had written a letter to the council, the lady at the council, the adoption agency, saying, thanking her for the help. Thank you for all your help on Friday, it said. And it went on to say that she had wanted to buy me, but she'd wanted to buy David. So that was my first name, was David Anthony Flower. She'd wanted to buy me something. She'd wanted to buy me a teddy bear. And the traffic had been really bad. So she didn't want to be late for this meeting. So she hadn't bought the bear. And she wanted to know, she was asking the woman at the adoption agency to ask my mum and dad if they would accept a teddy bear if she were to buy one now.
Wow. That's a pretty intense story. And then what happened from there?
And obviously I saw the letter back saying yes. And then, so, for me in that moment, I just saw this. I wish I'd got the letter right in front of me, because it's powerful when I say it, but if I actually read it to you, it's got about 100 times more power. The tears came streaming down my face, and I could see how much, how much she had loved me.
Yeah. Do you remember playing with this teddy bear as a child?
Yeah. I remember. I remember my granddad dying when I was about 7, and telling my teddy bear that he died. He was this this bear was a big part of my life as a kid.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about you and how your adoption shaped what you do today.
Well, so I decided to become a coach back in 2010. And my first kind of escapade of coaching was coaching small business owners, because I'd been really hung up with business success. That's where I thought my problem lay. Yeah, I thought that business success would make me happy. So I kind of started with that, and that didn't work out, and which was good, because it was a good lesson for me, that because I'd thought that business was what it was all about, and I pulled the plug on this business coaching venture, and I was okay. It didn't upset me, Well, it upset me a little bit, but not like I thought it would do. And then so I tried kind of a corporate coaching gig, which that didn't work out either. And then it's about 7 years ago, I just woke up one morning thinking, with the idea of a kids book. So this kids book was all about happiness. It was all about what I'd learned as a 40-year-old guy that I thought I wish I'd known when I was young, Right. So I started going into schools, and it became about empowering kids to make their dreams come true, and to be happy and to be confident, and about building their self-esteem, about ignoring other kids that say they can't make their dream come true, and also about ignoring them, empowering them to ignore bullies. So I love doing that. I kept the adoption thing out of that because I didn't want people to think that this was just for adopted kids, because it wasn't. And then a few different things have happened over the last few months, and I realised that I actually needed to bring my adoption story into what I do. So I go around the houses a bit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what I do now is I work with adoptees who are struggling, and I help them put the trauma, if you like, behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've known light, good times, and I know times when it being in the light, and I've known dark times with my adoption stuff. So I know there's a difference between the two. Whereas a lot of adoptees, they only know the dark stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of help them through raising their level of consciousness, and through my story and through all the stuff that I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I do is I work with adoptive parents who want a handle on how their adopted kids are feeling, or why they're feeling the way that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And they want a way to raise their kids' level of consciousness and help them thrive.
Right.
So my tagline is empowering adoptees to thrive.
Excellent. And do you find that it's difficult for the parents to grasp the feelings of their children who have been adopted? Do you feel like they can understand with your guidance?
So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I've taken very complicated, vague concepts that I've learned and distilled them down so that a 10-year-old can understand them. That's what all my work with. So now I just have to, I've distilled the truth. Well, what I talk about is the truth about who we are. Mm-hmm. And so I make it as simple as I can, but also true. And that's what they like. That's what they love. That makes it easy. That makes it easy to understand. So I use a lot of metaphors to help them, help everybody understand what's going on, and not fall for their, not buy into the myths that I used to buy into, and I see other people buying into.
And do you feel that through what you're doing now, that's brought you happiness?
Yeah. Yeah. This is helping somebody else. Mm-hmm. Is the biggest buzz in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, how can people find you?
So the best place to find me is on my website, which is simonbenn.co.uk.
Okay.
And Ben has 2 N's.
There you go. Okay.
.co.uk.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just be kind on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, we're all doing the best that we're all doing the best that we can, and beating ourselves up does us no good whatsoever. So yeah, so be kind on yourself, and the fact that if you're struggling, there's always hope. Yeah. There's not a lot of. We don't live in a world where there is a lot of hope is shared. We live in quite especially social media. We were discussing this earlier. There's a lot of blame. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of vitriol. There's a lot of name calling. There's a lot of shaming other people, and there's not a lot of hope. But in those worlds, but there is always hope. It's, and I guess I wish I saw the glimmers of hope even in most of the darkness. Most of the time I could see those glimmers of hope. Sometimes I couldn't, but that I'm here to say that hope is always there, no matter how dark life seems. There is always hope, and that's where the joy lies in the hope.
It's a very good message that you just put out there, definitely, especially for this upcoming new year that we are about to embark upon.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody last week, and she said, so this is somebody that I kind of see every now and again at the swimming pool, and she said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm fine. Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Yeah, I'm spot on. I haven't got COVID. I've known some people who have had it." But yeah, I'm great, thank you. I said, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody, because they'll get upset. They'll get upset that we're okay, and that we're doing fine, that we're doing great. And she said, oh yeah, I can see that, yeah. And I thought, oh, great, it's landed. The comment of hope and light has landed, and then she had to tell me about something to bring me back to reality, and she wasn't bringing me back to reality at all. She was telling me a bad story, because bad stories somehow. They seem to they sell newspapers, they get us clicking on pages on the internet, and we live in a world full of bad stories. So although she could see the point of keeping it quiet, don't tell anybody, it's actually good news, don't tell anybody there's hope, don't tell anybody that you're great, she got that, and in that moment she said, yeah, I see your point, Simon. Let's be okay, because we are okay. She then had to, 5 seconds later, it was like a sucker punch, where she had to share some bad news and bring me down so that I was at the level that she was at. And I just thought, isn't that really amazing? That kind of like intellectually she got it, and then she lost it. She had to come down to the level that most of us see on social media most of the time. That's really bizarre.
Right. Well, I love hearing what you're doing for adoptees and adopters and that support system, because I feel like that's something that lacks sometimes, and sometimes people don't know where to go or who to talk to and how to get that kind of support or build up or any sort of support whatsoever. So I love that you reach out to people like you do and help them understand each other.
Yeah, and I think I love it too. And one of the things that I found really unhelpful is all this focus on, the logistics of, the logistical issues around search and all that sort of stuff, and our thoughts. I've spoken to psychologists about this, and I've spoken to, I've spoken to therapists about this as well. And poking around in those dark thoughts just takes us further into the darkness. Mm-hmm. So I didn't find that helpful at all. What I want, what led me out of the darkness into the light wasn't to be found in my thoughts or in the logistics. It was, in understanding who we truly are. So if I can, I mentioned metaphors earlier on, and now, so I used to think that I was my story. And I used to think that I was my thoughts. Well, that's not the truth, because, our thoughts change split second to split second. We have 70,000 thoughts a day. So we can't be something that changes all the time. And a mentor of mine came up with a fantastic metaphor for this. He describes us all as being born perfect, like diamonds. So we are flawless. The light catches us, and we sparkle. And then we go through life, and we go through tough times, and we go through, well, let's call it manure to keep it, to use a nicer word. We go through manure, mm-hmm. and we think, and then we have thoughts that are full of manure as well. And we start to think that we are manure, but all the manure is a horrible substance that is covering the diamond. It's obscuring the diamond. And it's stopping us seeing our brilliance, because we aren't what we go through. We aren't our story. We aren't the thoughts in our head. They're just manure obscuring a diamond. But here's the thing: the manure doesn't change the diamond. It only hides it.
It makes a lot of sense, Simon. I like that. Wow.
And the therapist that I worked with, or I didn't work. I only worked with one. I spoke to a few of them. What they wanted to do was spend a lot of time talking about the manure, rather than helping me see that I was the diamond, and that we're all that. I'm not being kind of big-headed about this, or thinking, that I'm better than anybody else, because I'm saying we are all diamonds, no matter what manure we've been through in life.
Right. It's very uplifting to hear you say that, because I think a lot of times people aren't focused on that. And
no,
the hope,
no,
the hope, and not focusing on everything that you've been through every single moment of the day is going to keep you from shining.
Indeed, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know, because I did that.
I think a lot of us have a tendency to do that as well. And, but I like the way that you put it. That was how your therapist at the time phrased it.
What?
The diamond reference.
Oh no, that wasn't a therapist. That was a guy who's into kind of more like a personal development coach guy. I know a lot of traditionally trained psychotherapists, and who have found that, they've become MDs, and then they've trained in their specialty and stuff, and they have found that it doesn't work, and so they have gone into understanding, understanding different sort of areas, looking at consciousness rather than therapy, and that's what they talk about, and so one of those, no, it wasn't even a traditionally trained therapist, but they said their view is that traditional shrinking as in being a shrink, didn't work. So they went and found something different. So they're doing it from a practitioner perspective, and as a somebody that's spoken to traditional therapists in the past and found that what they said didn't work because they spent so much time talking about the manure. I can see why, as practitioners, they have left traditional shrinking behind and moved into more sort of consciousness-based stuff, which is what I do, I guess. But I bring it to this adoption speciality, because that's who I feel best that's who I feel best experienced enough to help. So to make this a little bit simpler, so 20 years ago, my best friend died in a car crash, and I was really, it had a big impact on me, and it obviously had a huge impact. It had a huge impact on his wife, and he just found out that his wife was pregnant, and he died before the baby was born. So she had a counsellor who was a widow herself, and after she found that incredibly helpful, and after she'd had a baby, she became a counselor as well. So I think for me, it's all about that personal experience. The personal experience means that we can understand where our clients are at and help them up the learning curve with what we learn on our learning curve.
Excellent.
Some long answers, Mary. I hope it all made sense.
No, I'm getting a lot of information from you today, and I'm definitely enjoying talking to you. And I'm hoping that you don't mind if some of our listeners are directed to you. So could you one more time remind them of your website and where to find you again?
Yeah, and I am here to help. So I'd be absolutely delighted to hear from any of them.
Good. And your website?
So my website is my name, which is Simon Benn. Benn has two N's on the end of it. So SIMONBENN.co.uk.
Excellent. And I believe you've answered all of my questions that I have on my end, but what is your hope for this upcoming year?
My hope for the upcoming year is that more of us stay hopeful more of the time.
Exactly. Me too. That's a big one. Hope, I think, is the word of 2021. Hope and repair. Well, Simon, I have definitely enjoyed talking to you today. And I hope that anybody else out there that might have some sort of or need a support group to reach out to Simon, because he is there to help you. Is what he does.
Yeah, and I've been absolutely delighted to talk to you, Mary. I've loved the conversation, and because let's hope that we've spread some hope in just this podcast that we've done. That's what it's about.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Thank you. Delighted.
Thank you, Simon. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. And listeners, if you would like to know more about Simon Benn and his coaching, you can reach out to him at Simon Benn, that's SIMONBENN.co.uk. And if you would like to share your adoption story, please write to us at theadoptionsquad@gmail.com. Feel free to remain anonymous if you wish. You can also visit our website, theadoptionsquad.com, to connect to our social media pages and our YouTube channel. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and review to help us grow. Until next time, word to your mothers and to your fathers.